On today's World Insight, the 60th anniversary of diplomatic ties between China and France, how relations have taken shape through the decades, in the words of former French Prime Minister Jean-Pierre Raffarin.
Hello, I'm Tian Wei, and welcome to World Insight. It's been 60 years since China and France started formal diplomatic relations. Through the decades, both countries have deepened relations through cultural and people-to-people exchanges. These ties have been supported and nurtured by a former French Prime Minister, Jean-Pierre Raffarin. China and France have engaged in strategic communication and high-level exchanges in recent years. The ties have been strengthened. In April 2023, French President Emmanuel Macron paid a state visit to China, along with the President of the European Commission. In February this year, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with the French President in Paris and co-chaired the 25th China-France Strategic Dialogue. This week, French Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs kicks off a visit to China. The two countries are also making it easier for people-to-people exchanges, with China having announced a 15-day visa-free policy for short-term stays of French citizens in China, and France announced that Chinese holders of a master's degree obtained through studying in France would be granted a 5-year visa. The past 60 years have yielded benefits from friendship between the two countries. The anniversary now serves as an important starting point for the two nations to forge ahead. Mr. Prime Minister, what a pleasure to see you in China.
Pleasure for me too.
You are a bridge builder between China and France and instrumental in making the relationship sustainable. Tell me, how do you think the nature of the relationship at this moment?
At this moment, the relationships are good because our both presidents have a lot of common meetings and they talk together very often. So we have a good understanding of each country. So for diplomatic relationship, it's a good situation. The problem is that the world is awful. We have war everywhere. This world is very dangerous, and there is a lot of nervosity in the relationship everywhere. So we have to be very responsible. And so I think this year, which is the 60th anniversary of the relationship between France and China, we can improve our relationship, not only for both countries, but also for the world and for peace.
Well said, sir. What exactly the improvement you are referring to?
I think that the main point is to have a common vision for the future of the multilateralism. We need a new world governance. We need to have more multilateralism, we have more discussion, and we have to avoid tension and choose cooperation. So I think that the main point nowadays is to have a common vision of the future. So we have a common vision for what we have to make against climate change. But we have to think what can we do together for peace. For peace in Ukraine, for peace in Israel and Gaza, for peace in Africa. You know, in Boao, we have spoken about growth, about development, but without peace, we have no growth.
Of course, is there some specific suggestions coming from the French side about peace regarding these issues and beyond?
Yes, I think that we have to talk with Russia. And I think that the influence of China is very strong in this work. So the people of China are always in history in favor of peace. You have never made the war outside You have made war when you were attacked. So you are very credible to talk about peace. And I think that France and Germany, we have made a lot of work to become friends. It was very awful for the Second World War. And now we are friends. We are also credible to talk about peace because we have done it. So I think that France and China could have initiative for peace together.
We see China and France has been having frequent interactions. This 60th anniversary, both sides have been planning in a very big way. What do you think, sir, will be some of the messages that need to be carried throughout the year so that we really celebrate it with its real essence?
So I think that firstly, we have to be conscious that the main point of our relation is cultural respect. We are very old civilization, very different languages, there is a lot of difference. But this difference is very fertile. It's important to have this curiosity with the other, fascinating. And I think we have people, we understand without talking the same language. We understand the haze, you understand the global communication, body language. So we are cultural people, and that's the main point. And we have to discuss culture, we have to learn the culture of the other, we have to work together to have artists, to have leaders in cultural matter, to have a lot of action, a common creation. So it's very important to have this discussion about culture. Every year we have a forum about cultural practice in China and in France, and I think it's the main subject. The other point, more political, is to have the same facing versus some challenges. Of course, climate change, it was very important to have this agreement between France and China for the COP in Paris, to have this Paris agreement. And China worked a lot for this agreement, and it was very important. So we have to face together these very important challenges. And maybe there is a new consensus in the world which is very important. That the planet is becoming a political object. Young people in France, in USA, in Bangalore, in Shanghai, in Shenyang, young people want to protect planet for protect mankind. Right. So this is a very strong consensus among the youth all over the world. So this consensus could be developed in the civil society to promote action for planet. So I think if we are able to face this challenge together, we will be stronger for the future and for the multilateralism.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
By adhering to the principle of mutual benefit and fixing differences through dialogue and consultation, ties between China and France, some analysts suggest, can be taken as a good example for the EU. In a world fraught with uncertainties, China and the EU are working to make their ties remain stable. They are each other's second largest trading partners, with nearly $100 million worth of goods flowing between them every hour. The ties also bear strategic significance and global influence. Today, it is far better for the two to work closely in dealing with external challenges and bring more benefits to their people and the world. You are mentioning the relationship between China and France, with the angle also between China and Europe continent. So about that, we see some difficulties in trade relationship. We see some discussions about some so-called controversial issues. But overall, as the former French Prime Minister, how do you see the nature of China and Europe today? What is the rhetorics and what is the reality?
Now, you know, our very main point for us is the war with Ukraine. And with the war, people of Europe are very afraid. And when people are afraid about war, they call NATO, they call USA. But there is a lot of European countries, they want to have an European defense, not only NATO, but a European defense for the sovereignty of Europe. So, you know, now we are a little bit divided about that. Some countries want to be under the protection of NATO. Other countries want to be sovereign in defense matter. So that's the question right now. And there is a reason that some people want to be more closer to USA than to east of the world. For us, since de Gaulle, we want to have discussion with everybody. And France wants to have discussion with West and with the East. And that's the reason why we want to have close relationship with China. Of course, we have a lot of difficulties about trade, but that's the life. China wants to support its exportation, and we want to have a lot of exportation from France. Okay, so we have to deal everything. So I think we need to have discussion, and the discussion to have always discussion about tax. It's not the good way, because if you tax a vehicle electrics, you tax a cognac, you tax. It's not the good cooperation.
No.
The good cooperation is to have agreement and to think the development of the counterpart, to have discussion, win-win cooperation. That's a good way. So we are discussing, but the relationships are good. We are very in line to have a multilateralism world and to have a new organization of world governance.
So you're saying, sir, very clearly that the common vision strategically should be very clear. Well, there should be technical details that the both sides should hammer out in order to deal with some reality issues such as trade.
Exactly. Just a word in French, because the subject is a bit difficult for my poor English. Nous avons des rivalités commerciales. C'est normal et c'est avec tous les pays. Nous devons respecter une régulation internationale et une régulation bilatérale. Le ministre du Commerce chinois sera bientôt à Paris pour avancer dans la coopération. Nous avons des process de discussion qui fonctionnent bien et quand il y a des désaccords, on trouve un chemin pour l'avenir. Donc je suis confiant dans les discussions qu'ont les responsables chinois et les responsables français dans cette année du 60e anniversaire. Nous attendons, nous espérons une visite du président Xi ce printemps en France et une visite du président Macron à l'automne en Chine. Et ces discussions-là doivent pouvoir aplanir les problèmes.
Sounds excellent. On the other hand, Mr. Prime Minister, there's a lot of discussion about the Chinese economy. China's growth has been slowing down compared to 10 years ago, of course, and now looking for new engines of growth, now looking at innovation, looking at what China calls new quality productive forces. For example, AI and new energy and also EVs, and the list goes on. But I also understand France is also very determined to build its own innovation path, to seek its own future. So how do you see the potential, first of all, of cooperation? And secondly, how to deal with two very independent-minded countries, yet want to be friends or want to be partners. So help us to understand your sophisticated ways of approach this.
You know, I was very interested by the speech of President Xi Jinping in the Belt and Road Forum. And he said that China and BRICS and so on want to have 8 priorities, such artificial intelligence, for ecological transition and so on. 8 priorities. But for each priorities, he said we have to build a world regulation. And I think that for our cooperation, the priority right now is to work together for the regulation. Because artificial intelligence, it's a very fantastic progress, but we have some problems with that. For one point of view, it's beautiful. For the other, it could be bad. So we have to make a regulation, an international regulation. And I think that France and China can work together about regulations, to have same vision and to build something will be bigger after that with other countries. But at the beginning, I think it could a good idea to discuss between France and China, between Europe and China. For example, I think that the regulation for AI, it's very interesting to have discussion about that. And for health, for example, we have a lot of progress, but we have something we have to pay attention. So, in French, je pense que nous pouvons travailler ensemble sur la maîtrise des nouvelles technologies. Et là, sur la prudence qu'il faut, sur la protection des personnes, sur les équilibres à respecter, je pense qu'il faut avoir les priorités, il faut aussi avoir l'encadrement, les normes de ces priorités, et la régulation peut se faire de manière partagée.
Jean-Pierre Raffarin served as Prime Minister for 3 years, but he has been a supporter of China-France relations for decades. Raffarin made his marks on many exchanges between China and France. Even today, many Chinese remember clearly he visited China during the difficult time when China was hit by the severe acute respiratory syndrome, or known as SARS. The visit was considered a sign of China-France friendship and mutual trust. After leaving office, Raffarin has been active in people-to-people diplomacy. He promotes Belt and Road cooperation and China-France friendship in various occasions. On China-EU relations, he believes the two sides should seek common ground while respecting differences and expanding cooperation for a peaceful future. You're talking about the future in a beautiful way, Mr. Prime Minister. The history also, as well, 60 years ago, when the two great leaders from France and China decided that the two countries would really come together and establish diplomatic relations. France was very first countries from the so-called West to do that. So what do you see might be the courage and the wisdom of that time that needs to be further studied and carried on even today?
I think to be a leader, you need to have a vision you need to imagine the future. De Gaulle was a leader. Mao Zedong was a leader. Together, they project the world in the future. And when you see Chinese people, when you see as clever they are, as courageous they are, if it were poor at this period, you know here you have a very extraordinary energy. So you will have results in the future. So the vision of de Gaulle, the world need to have a China strong to participate to the balance of the world. So I think this vision is a characteristic of a real leader. And nowadays, it's something like the same vision. We can't have a China bashing everywhere because the people of China will face a lot of difficulties. But which country have no difficulties? USA, a lot of difficulties. Europe, a lot of difficulties. So everybody has to face difficulties. But when your people are courageous, clever, and they want to work, you have results. So it's a good idea, I think, in this past, but also in the future, to foresee that China is necessary for the balancing of the world.
When you are talking about leadership, I've been, by the way, a fan of your latest book, which is called the Leadership Book 2. And I'm trying to read French and learn French. I hope I'll be better in the future next time talking to you. But I did learn a lot of qualities throughout the years while interacting and interviewing you about leadership. Mr. Prime Minister, you are not only a leadership of your generation, but also you're trying to serve the generation of leadership today by being the advisor to the current French president, Mr. Macron, who is also a visionary leader. Now, tell us, what is the interactions like for you and President Macron in talking about China, discussing China? Well, at the same time, I also see you taking your family, especially the future generation, to come to China and let them see the country, to learn the language. I see a lot of energy you put into this future generation collaboration and communications. Tell me more about that.
I have learned something from China. When you are talking with Chinese people, the Chinese people have always one target when they are discussing with us. What I can learn from France, what I can learn from US, what I can learn. The Chinese want to learn, and it's very important. Sometimes in France, we know we don't need to learn. A lot of people are thinking they don't have to learn. And China said we have to learn, and we have to learn from the other. I think it's very important. And you know, in France and in Europe, a lot of people are talking about China without visiting China. And they don't know who is China and who is Chinese people. And I think that we have to develop the understanding of the people of China. And now I've seen some French presidents, they never been in China before being president. So I think every young people who be a leader in the world have to go to China, to have friends from China, to have discussion with the culture of China. China is very important, the whole civilization, very sophisticated language, very beautiful and difficult history. So we have to know everything like that. So I have great children, and I don't want they go through this world without knowing who is Chinese people. And I want they are friends from China. And my boys, 40 years old, has a very good friend of Chinese people and very good boy, and they talk together in English, a bit French, but they play together, and that's a new world. We have to know the other. And you know, right now, when people have no practice they make too much ideology. And you balance ideology with practice. And I say to my French friends, so when you have a Chinese friend, is a very good friend. And don't be afraid about China. Don't be afraid about Chinese. You have to talk with them, you have to give. And if you give, you will receive.
That's just like between two persons, isn't it?
Exactly, that's right.
As simple and as sincere as that.
Yes. And it's easier when people have a deep culture. And in China, you have a deep culture. Very different. And it's very interesting to talk together about creation with transformation. We have a lot. For you, unity is very important. For us, unity is something like a means to get something. In France, we love what we call rebel. So we're the hero. So we have to discuss, because we have not the same thinking, but we have the deepness which is
of
equal.
Humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we go, I know France is going to celebrate the grand occasion for the Summer Olympics this year. So how do you see this period of time? How much this will be a bridge for French and also other countries, including China?
I think that we have to be very attentive to the situation of the global world. And I think it could be not very positive if we have too much competition between BRICS and G7, for example. So we are part of G7, and China is a leader of BRICS. So I think that France and China has to talk to avoid a big tension in two parts of the world. We have to be conscient aujourd'hui que le monde ne peut pas être bipolaire et que l'on ne peut pas avoir une bataille entre l'Ouest et l'Est. Et je crois que dans les deux parties, la Chine, pour ce qui est des BRICS et du Sud global, pour ce qui est de l'Occident et des démocraties, la France, ensemble, nous pouvons construire des relations communes apaisées, respectueuses des différences et de la diversité.
I know you are a gentleman not only of words, but of actions, and that has been testified by time. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
And that's my exclusive interview recently with Jean-Pierre Raffarin, former French Prime Minister. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on X and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of my team. Thanks for being with us. Bye for now.